Ahoy there. Today on the Red Sea, what is the most statistically improbable thing that has ever happened to you? This has got to be unlikely. I was on holiday at Universal Studios, Florida with my brother-in-law Nick. We're both Brits. When a random family rush over, start hugging and kissing him and speaking Spanish. Nick was very confused until he heard them call him Chris. It turns out the family are Peruvian and live next door to Nick's identical twin Chris, who moved out to Peru 4 years earlier. I'd love someone to calculate the odds of that. I found a random orange on the street while walking to school. I picked it up and tossed it down a driveway, and it landed right up against a car's back tire. When I was walking home, the car backed out of the driveway, and as it drove over the orange it sprayed all over me. I drove to the park to go running, using my cell phone as GPS. When I was done I put my phone on the top of my car and spent a few minutes stretching. Then I got in my car and drove home. On the way home, driving about 35 with the window down, I took a turn and the cell phone slid off the roof of the car and into my open window, bouncing off my arm and landing in my lap. I never told anyone because I did not think they'd believe me. In 2007 I read The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. The book inspired me to quit my job and move to Uruguay. En route to Uruguay, I got in line to get my passport stamped. The guy in line directly in front of me was Tim Ferriss on his way to Uruguay for the first time. I introduced myself and told him his book inspired my life change. We had a nice 3-minute conversation while standing in line. Cool guy. In the middle of making an omelette I answered the door while holding a whole egg. It turned out to be my new neighbor asking if she could borrow an egg. The look of confusion on her face when I produced one on the spot was only matched by my own. She took it and left without saying a word. It was super weird. The work I used to do required me to carry a lot of keys. At the end of my shift every day I would go to hang up my keys on a cup hook. But as I entered the room I would toss them over to the board with the hooks, trying to get them to land on the hook. And every day the keys would miss and fall to the floor. I would retrieve them and hang them and sit and do my paperwork. One day, at the end on my shift, I was a bit later than usual and the supervisors were in the room. Again I tossed my keys and they hooked. All of the supervisors were stunned, but my direct supervisor said, "I bet you could not ever do that again." I grabbed the keys off the hook, walked over to the door, and tossed them again. And again they landed on the hook. And in the 2 years of working there, that was the only 2 times they caught. When I was a kid, I went to a hockey game with my family. We're sitting there enjoying the game. I'm drinking my Sprite and having a good time. My dad turns to me and asks if I wanted a hot pretzel. Hells yeah, I want a hot pretzel. I take my Sprite bottle with me and we go and get our hot pretzels. On our way back, we could not remember which aisle we were on. My dad said I think it was 15. No, I said. We were in aisle 16. I believed it with conviction. My dad was like lol okay, and we went down aisle 16. We walked down to our row and we were on the wrong side of it. I was wrong. Derp. We were supposed to be in aisle 15. Instead of climbing the stairs and going around everyone, we were those discourteous douchebags who shuffled their way across the aisle to get to the other side. I held my Sprite bottle by the neck, tight against my stomach, so I could take up less space as I sidled past people. All of a sudden, my pop bottle is gone. It's just missing. There is Sprite everywhere. I'm sticky. The girl sitting behind me is sticky. Shite s messy. What the duck? I look on the ground and my Sprite bottle is completely crunched in half. This was back in the days when Sprite bottles were made of pretty tough plastic. They did not give a damn about the environment. Earlier I saw people on the ice with slingshots launching bulled up t-shirts into the audience. I thought that they were bulls for street hockey at the time, so I assumed I got hit by one. So I looked on the ice. There was nobody on the ice at all. What caught my eye was the Jumbotron. I was on the Jumbotron, looking like the confused child that I was. Here's what happened. The puck was in play and somehow got shot over the protective glass and into the audience. It hit dead center into my Sprite bottle. Had I not brought the Sprite bottle with me, I would have been hit in the stomach. Had I just listened to my dad and we went down the right aisle, it would have hit the girl I was standing in front of in the face. We remained on the Jumbotron until I reached my seat. We were only a couple rows behind the visiting team's bench, and the coach called me down. He gave me their goalie stick, signed, and congratulated me on my great save. I still have both the stick and the Sprite bottle. The girl I was in front of ended up finding the puck underneath the seat in front of her. It was a good day for what? Whilst on honeymoon I bumped into my best friend from high school. in Venice, Italy. I had not seen him for 14 years. He lives in Australia. I live in England. A guy with the same name and same birth date as me died. I was doing a job at the law firm where his will was held on the day of the reading. They freaked out and asked me to confirm a bunch of details to make sure I hadn't died. I once had a chat with a random stranger on Omegle video for hours. Parted ways. Did not want to keep in touch. Bumped into the same person 1 year later and recognized the person immediately. I was on chat roulette once and this guy was playing guitar and me and my friends were drinking and recognized the song. It was Born of Osiris and we just kept drinking watching him play. He asked if we had any requests. I requested Black and Blue by Bring Me the Horizon. He looked at the camera and said, "Do you guys know who I am?" Sure enough, he was the guitarist for Bring Me the Horizon and he then played their whole Suicide Season album for us. It was pretty awesome. Once I fell off of my bike and got stung by a bee on the way to the ground. My friend's bank account number is the same as her passport number, assuming these are both 9-digit codes, and all the digits are assigned with equally randomly from the pool 0, 9. The probability of this happening is 0.000000001. Or 1 in a billion. I was teaching ESL in Korea and we went out one night to a local bar that had a monthly open mic night where a lot of us foreigners would gather. I got chatting with a random white guy at the bar and asked where he was from. He said Ottawa. I was like, no way. I used to live in Ottawa. Where about in Ottawa did you live? He answered, Sandy Hill. I once again said, no way. Haha. I had a car stolen that was found there. His face goes slack. Was it an 88 to 91 Honda Civic? Yes. Yeah. I think that was me. Let me get your drinks for the night. I once went to get a Gatorade out of a vending machine after pet. I put all of my money in, $1.50, and out came a Gatorade bottle with a shirt in it. It sucked because I was thirsty, and you can't drink a shirt. My parents divorced when I was an infant. My biological father was abusive and an alcoholic amongst other issues, so my mother chose to forego child support in order to keep our location a secret. Fast forward 13 years, 15-year-old me boards a plane to California. I live in New York City and head to a sleepaway camp for a week. At the camp I start talking to this girl and grow instantly enamored. So the girl and I down almost all of our time together during camp. But she is also there with one of her friends. So on the 4th night the 3 of us are sitting around a campfire talking and I tell them about how I live with my mom and why. Mention that last we had heard my father was living somewhere out west and that I had not seen him since I was a baby. I also mentioned that my mother had just recently gotten remarried to a man we had been living with for almost 10 years and that he had adopted me, so I took his last name. Now this is where shite gets weird. The girl's friend, let's call her Amanda, asks what my biological father's last name was, so I tell her and she gets crazy pale. She asks me a ton of questions about him. What nationalities is he? Italian/Native American, African American? Where did he and your mother live? Small town just north of Nick. And a bunch of other stuff. She starts crying and tells me that perfectly explains my father. He moved out here after his first wife left him. He and my mom had me, got married and then had my younger brother. I think you're my older brother and that is how I kept my sister, who I did not know existed, in a camp of 300 plus kids across an entire continent. Once walking out of a grocery store, me and a buddy did that pew 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 gun thing with our hands and said something pretty stoned to some guy who was about to step into the parking lot, and he stopped for half a second to glare at us. In that half second, some Dodge Duck driver sped by and would have smashed the guy. We all did a double take and went on our ways. I got pulled over by the police because my car and the car in front of me had the same license plate. I was sitting at lights behind a wee black Vauxhall with a police car behind me. Next thing I know, the police are asking us both to pull over. We both had the same license plate. Turns out that both cars were registered at the same dealership on the same day. A clerical error had led to both getting the same plate. A bird pooped on my head while I was riding a bike, and therefore moving quite fast. And literally 5 minutes later, after I had cleaned up, a bird pooped on my head again. Irish guy here. A few years ago my mates and I met a bunch of girls in a bar one night whilst on a working holiday in Ocean City, Maryland. Great night had by all. Fast forward 12 months. Walked into a random bar in Cairns, Australia, and yep, bumped into the exact same girls. When I was at university I would quite often get a taxi ride after a night out from a nice old man nicknamed Grandpa. He had Grandpa on his taxi license and had business cards with Grandpa on them, etc. He would always give you cheap rides and come whenever you called. Anyway, 4 years or so passed without me getting a ride from him. I had heard rumors that he had died, which was quite saddening. About a month or so ago a couple mates and I were waiting to get picked up by a taxi when I decided to tell them about the story of Grandpa. So eventually I finished my story and our taxi arrived with none other than Grandpa at the wheel. I stood on a venomous snake by accident but escaped unhurt because I stood on its head. Once when I was surfing I stepped on a stingray's head and very narrowly jumped before he whipped his stinger forward to hit me. I felt like Spider-Man the whole day. I won tickets to see SNL the exact weekend I was going to the East Coast to visit my dad. If you do not know how SNL tickets work, you register for their raffle in August, and then they email you 2 weeks prior to the show you got selected to. I have never felt luckier. One time I ate a Kit Kat, and it was all chocolate.
That sounds so disappointing.
I ran up the rear end of a taxi twice on the same night. The first time I was going clubbing with mates. Head locked his brakes, and I drove straight up the backside. We exchanged details etc. After the club we were driving back. I thought the cabin front looked familiar. He locked his brakes again. I smashed him again. He gets out and turns white. Why? Why? If you are reading this, you watched until the end of the video. Smash that like button if you have enjoyed it. Bam. On screen there should be some more videos similar to this. So either go do something else or watch more videos. That's about it. There is no more here. What are you waiting for, a secret message or something? This is not a secret, but subscribe for more videos like this.